The embarrassed father's daughter. The mahogany doors of Bennett Industries' main conference room had never looked more imposing. I straightened my simple black blazer, not designer, but impeccably tailored, and checked my watch. 8:57 a.m. In 3 minutes, I'd walk through those doors, not as Sarah Bennett, the daughter my father had thrown out 2 years ago, but as Southeast Holdings' majority shareholder and new CEO. My mind drifted back to that rainy night in our family's circular driveway. No daughter of mine will be a janitor. Dad's voice boomed across our manicured lawn, echoing off the limestone facade of our family mansion. My 2 suitcases landed with a thud on the wet pavement. "Get out." Mom stood in the doorway, wringing her hands but silent. My brother Michael smirked from behind his perfect Windsor knotted tie. The golden boy, the heir apparent to Bennett Industries, watching his competition being eliminated. "Dad, please," I said calmly. "Just let me explain." "Explain what?" "That my Harvard-educated daughter is throwing away her life to clean toilets. That you're embarrassing this family by taking some minimum wage job instead of the executive position I arranged." I picked up my bags, their expensive leather now stained from puddle water. "The maintenance position at Stellar Corp is a good opportunity." "Opportunity?" He laughed bitterly. "The only opportunity you'll have now is learning what it's like without your trust fund, without your car, your credit cards, your family name." "James," Mom finally spoke. "Maybe we should." "No." Dad cut her off. "She made her choice. Now she can live with it." I loaded my bags into my old Toyota Corolla, the only thing in my name that they couldn't take away. As I pulled out of the driveway, I caught one last glimpse of them in my rearview mirror. Dad's rage, Mom's weakness, Michael's satisfaction. None of them knew that the maintenance position at Stellar Corp was just a cover. None of them had bothered to ask why I had really chosen this path. And none of them had any idea that I'd been quietly buying up shares of Bennett Industries through shell companies for the past 5 years. A discreet cough brought me back to the present. My assistant, David, stood beside me with a tablet. "Everything's ready, Ms. Bennett. The board is assembled. Your father and brother are seated at the head table." I nodded, checking my reflection in the mirrored wall. At 28, I looked nothing like the sheltered society girl I'd been 2 years ago. My eyes were sharper, my stance more confident. Has the news leaked? No. The merger announcement is still under wraps. The board only knows they're meeting the CEO of Southeast Holdings, who's acquiring controlling interest. Your father's been trying to block it. But he doesn't have enough shares anymore. I smiled slightly. Is the security team in place? Yes, in case Mr. Bennett or your brother react poorly. 9:00 a.m. Showtime. I pushed open the mahogany doors and strode into the conference room. 25 board members sat around the massive table, my father and Michael at the far end. Dad was mid-sentence, probably making another argument against the merger. Cannot allow some unknown entity to. He stopped as I walked in, his face registering first confusion, then shock, then fury. "Sarah?" Michael stood up so quickly his chair scraped loudly against the floor. The chairman, Mr. Richardson, looked between us with dawning understanding. Ah, perfect timing. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Sarah Bennett, CEO of Southeast Holdings, and as of this morning, majority shareholder of Bennett Industries." The room erupted in whispers. Dad's face went from red to white to purple. Michael sank back into his chair. I took my place at the podium, surveying the room with the calm confidence that comes from holding all the cards. Good morning, everyone. We have a lot to discuss about Bennett Industries' future. But first, I believe my father has some questions about my employment history. Dad slammed his fist on the table. This is ridiculous. She's not qualified. Actually, Mr. Richardson interrupted, shuffling through some papers. Ms. Bennett's credentials are quite impressive. Harvard MBA, followed by specialized training in corporate restructuring. And over the past 5 years, she's built Southeast Holdings into a $4.3 billion technology and real estate consortium. I clicked my presentation remote. The screen behind me lit up with our corporate structure. While working as a janitor at Stellar Corp, I was actually overseeing the acquisition of their AI division. That maintenance badge gave me access to every floor, every meeting room, every conversation that mattered. Michael's face twisted. But the trust fund. You've been living like a pauper. No, brother. I've been living within my means while reinvesting my inheritance. Unlike you, I didn't need 5-star hotels and private jets to prove my worth. The board members were studying their packets now, eyes widening at the numbers. Southeast Holdings had been quietly acquiring Bennett Industries stock for years, starting long before Dad threw me out. Impossible, Dad stammered. I would have known. Would you? I pulled up another slide. You were too busy grooming Michael to notice that your biggest clients were shifting their contracts to shell companies I controlled. Too focused on maintaining appearances to see that your own board members were selling their shares to my investment groups. Mr. Richardson cleared his throat. The numbers are quite clear, James. Southeast Holdings now controls 52% of Bennett Industries' voting shares. And their proposal for modernization is exactly what we've been needing. I circled the table slowly, my heels clicking on the marble floor. While you were mocking my janitorial career, I was learning our industry from the ground up. I know every weakness in our infrastructure, every inefficiency in our operations, and exactly how to fix them. Opening my tablet, I projected our 5-year projection onto the screen. Bennett Industries has been losing market share for 3 years. Our technology is outdated, our management structure is bloated, and our costs are out of control. That changes today. The board members leaned forward, captivated by the transformation plan I'd spent years developing. Even Michael looked impressed, despite himself. Dad stood up abruptly. This is all very interesting, but you're forgetting something. I'm still CEO. My contract. Your contract, I interrupted smoothly, has a change of control clause. Section 7, paragraph 3. Would you like me to read it? His face paled. That clause had been his idea, years ago, when he'd been acquiring smaller companies. He never imagined it would be used against him. The shareholders' meeting is in 10 minutes, I continued. The votes are already secured. You can either step down gracefully and remain as a consultant, or we can make this messy. Your choice, Dad. The room was silent, except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. 2 years of planning, of working in secret, of letting them think I'd failed. It all came down to this moment. Mom burst into the room, designer handbag clutched like a shield. James, I just heard. She stopped short when she saw me at the podium. Sarah? But you're a janitor. Hello, Mother. You might want to sit down. We're about to discuss some significant family business changes. The next hour was a blur of votes, signatures, and shocked faces. Dad, realizing he was outmaneuvered, accepted the consultant position with what grace he could muster. Michael was removed from his executive role but offered a lower management position, contingent on actual performance metrics. As the board members filed out, congratulating me and sharing their private relief at the change in leadership, Mom approached hesitantly. "Sweetheart, if we'd known." "You could have asked," I said quietly. "Any time in the past 2 years, you could have called, visited, tried to understand my choices. Instead, you all assumed I was a failure because I didn't follow Dad's plan." She flinched. "We were wrong. I was wrong. But you're so different now. So confident." "I always was, Mom. You just never noticed." Dad and Michael stood by the door, their world thoroughly upended. The great James Bennett, brought low by the daughter he'd thrown away. The golden son, replaced by the sister he'd mocked. "The maintenance staff meeting is in an hour," I announced, gathering my things. "I suggest you both attend. It's time you learned how this company really runs, from the ground up." Dad's jaw clenched. "You can't expect me to." "Actually, I can, and I do. Your consultant contract requires you to learn all aspects of operations, starting with maintenance and working your way up, just like I did." As they left, shell-shocked and subdued, David appeared with my schedule. "Your 11 a.m. is here, the tech merger team from Silicon Valley. Then lunch with the infrastructure modernization consultants." I nodded, straightening my simple blazer. "Have the maintenance team ready in conference room B. I want Dad and Michael to understand exactly what I learned in my janitor days." Looking out over the city skyline from my new office, Dad's old office, I allowed myself a small smile. The maintenance badge that had caused so much family drama sat framed on my wall, next to my Harvard diploma, and the first share of Bennett Industries stock I'd ever purchased. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong, it's proving yourself right. And I was just getting started. The next few months were a whirlwind of changes. I implemented the modernization plan I'd spent years developing, streamlining operations, and updating our technology infrastructure. The stock price rose 40% in the first quarter. Dad struggled with his new role, alternating between grudging respect and simmering resentment. Michael, surprisingly, adapted better. Stripped of his entitlement, he actually showed promise in project management. Mom tried to bridge the gaps, hosting awkward family dinners where we all pretended the past 2 years hadn't happened. But things had changed irreversibly. The power dynamics had shifted, and we were all adjusting to our new reality. One evening, as I was working late, Dad appeared in my office doorway. He looked older, humbler, his expensive suit slightly wrinkled from a day of actual work. "The maintenance team," he said quietly, "they respect you. Not because you're CEO, but because you worked alongside them, learned their names, their challenges, their ideas for improvement." I kept typing. "They're the backbone of this company. Something you might have realized if you'd ever looked past the executive floor." He stepped inside, running his hand along the mahogany bookshelf. "His bookshelf. Once. I was wrong, Sarah, about everything. I was so focused on my vision for you that I couldn't see your vision for yourself. And now, I looked up finally. Now that my vision has saved the company you nearly ran into the ground." He flinched but nodded. "Now I understand. You're a better CEO than I ever was, because you see the whole picture, not just the top floor." I studied him for a moment. The great James Bennett, learning humility at 63. "There's a maintenance team meeting tomorrow at 7 a.m. Don't be late." He almost smiled. "Yes, boss." As he left, I looked at the maintenance badge again. The photo showed a younger me, smile confident despite the job title that had so horrified my family. That badge had taught me more about leadership than any Harvard class. Sometimes the path to the top starts at the bottom, and sometimes the people who throw you out are the ones who end up begging to come back in. The next board meeting, I implemented profit sharing for all employees, starting with the maintenance team. As I watched Dad and Michael nodding in approval, I realized that sometimes the best leadership lessons come from a janitor's closet. And my family, they're still learning. But now they're learning from the bottom up, just like I did. Because sometimes the best way to run a family business is to remember that every position, every person matters. Even, especially, the janitors. 6 months into my role as CEO, the real transformation of Bennett Industries was becoming evident. Our quarterly reports showed a 60% increase in employee satisfaction and a 45% reduction in operational costs. The maintenance badge program, requiring all executives to spend time in different departments, had become a Harvard Business School case study in effective leadership. One morning, as I walked through the lobby of our headquarters, I overheard a conversation that made me pause. "Can you believe the CEO used to work maintenance here?" One janitor said to another. "Now my kid's in the company's college scholarship program. Never thought I'd see the day." I smiled, remembering the day I'd announced the education initiative. Michael had actually suggested expanding it to include trade schools, his first real contribution as the new head of employee development. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Dinner tonight? Your father has something to tell you." The family dynamics were still complicated. Weekly dinners had become a careful dance of reconciliation and reorganization. But tonight felt different. At 7, I pulled up to my parents' house in my Tesla Model S, my one concession to corporate success. The same circular driveway where Dad had thrown my bags 2 years ago now seemed smaller, less intimidating. Mom opened the door before I could knock. She'd stopped wearing quite so much designer clothing, though her pearls remained perfectly matched. "Sweetheart, come in. Your father's in his study." Dad's study, once his command center for running Bennett Industries, had changed. The massive oak desk remained, but now it held papers about employee initiatives and sustainability programs instead of merger documents and profit reports. He stood as I entered, and I noticed he was wearing the maintenance team jacket, the same one he'd once called "beneath our family's dignity." "Sarah," he said, gesturing to a chair, "I've been reviewing the quarterly numbers." I sat, preparing for criticism. Old habits die hard. "They're impressive," he continued. "But what's more impressive is this." He handed me a folder. Inside were letters from employees, dozens of them. Stories about how the changes had affected their lives. A maintenance worker whose daughter was now in college. An AT specialist who had been promoted based on merit rather than connections. A cleaning staff supervisor who'd implemented cost-saving measures that saved the company millions. "You didn't just take over the company," Dad said quietly. "You transformed it into something I should have built decades ago." I looked up, surprised by the emotion in his voice. "I've been talking with the board," he continued. "I'd like to step down as consultant, but not because I'm angry or resentful anymore. Because I want to start something new. A foundation, helping other companies implement the changes you've made here." My throat tightened. The Bennett Foundation for Corporate Transformation. He shook his head. "The Sarah Bennett Foundation for Inclusive Leadership. If you'll let me use your name." Before I could respond, Michael burst in, waving a tablet. "Sarah, sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this. Forbes just released their 40 under 40 list. I took the tablet, reading the headline. Sarah Bennett, the janitor who became a billionaire CEO. The article detailed my journey, praising the ground-up leadership model I'd implemented. But what caught my eye was the quote from Michael. My sister taught our family that true leadership isn't about corner offices and executive titles. It's about understanding every level of your business, respecting every employee, and having the courage to start at the bottom, even when you could have started at the top. Mom appeared with champagne, her eyes misty. I had them polish the crystal glasses that had been sitting dusty since that night. As we stood in the study, the same room where Dad had once told me I was a disappointment, I realized something profound. Success isn't just about proving others wrong. Sometimes it's about giving them the chance to prove themselves right. To new beginnings, Dad proposed, raising his glass. To learning from every level, Michael added. To family, Mom said softly. I looked at my maintenance badge, still carried in my wallet as a reminder. To all of us, I said. Every employee, every position, every lesson learned. Later that night, as I walked through the quiet halls of Bennett Industries, I stopped to help one of the night maintenance workers with a stubborn cleaning cart. You don't have to do that, Ms. Bennett, he said, embarrassed. I smiled, remembering my first day with a similar cart. Actually, I do, because this company works from the ground up. Always has, always will. The next morning, I added one more item to our corporate policy. Every new hire, regardless of position, starts with a week in maintenance. Because sometimes the view from the bottom shows you exactly how to reach the top. And my maintenance badge? It's still the first thing visitors see when they enter my office. A reminder that success isn't about where you sit in the boardroom. It's about understanding every room in the building. Because sometimes the best CEOs start as janitors. And sometimes the best families are built not from the top down, but from the ground up. That's not just a business lesson. That's the Bennett way. The new Bennett way. And we're just getting started.